Hello everyone and welcome back to Dragalia Foundry. Today's video is going to be my preview and first look at the new details we got for Festival Phenoms. This brand new summon showcase focuses on the shadow element and it starts in just a couple of days. We're going to get this alongside a revival or rerun of the New Year's Tidings Fortune from Afar raid event, which was an awesome raid. Fantastic free welfare unit in the form of Botan, who can inflict bleed, buff up the team. Really good random drops from that, so awesome to see that come back, and cool that the banner that will run alongside it also happens to have a festival theme. So let's go ahead and play this. We're getting a summer festival banner, but it's not limited. There hasn't been any notice that it is limited, so we can assume that everything here will be part of the normal summoning pool. And our first newly added adventurer
Time to unveil the best damn festival you've ever
is
seen.
Yaten, a Shadow Sword attacker. Festival Rush, it's a lot of text. Basically, it deals shadow damage ahead and increases your energy level by 1 stage. If you're fully energized, which means you have 5 energy levels, it actually changes form into another attack called Festival Dance. And Bold Blade increases the entire team's energy level by 2 stages.
Time to throw the festival to end all festival.
Then we have Natalie, who is a Shadow Blade attacker. Defiant Dance deals shadow damage directly ahead and increases her energy level by 1 stage. Then Clean Slate removes all debuffs from Natalie if her HP is below 30% of max when using it. She gets a strength buff, and if it's above that, she actually gets a shield, which I'll talk about more later on. Then we get Shinobi, who is just this too cool dragon. He's a shadow dragon, and he takes a page from Konohana Sakuya because he has 20% strength and skill damage of 70%. However, his skill is kind of like Freya's, except his deals damage, but it has that same effect that she does, that it energizes the entire team. And if you look at his animations there, very similar to Gilgamesh, so he's an amalgamation of several dragons. Yeah, it looks like this is going to last until the 10th or 11th, depending on your time zone, and no new 4 stars here from what we can tell in the trailer. Let's go ahead and switch over to the notices board for even more details. We're going to read through this, talk about the new 5 stars, since like I said, it looks like the 4 stars will all be returning units of some type. It's going to kick off in my time zone on the 30th, which is also when basically the Wish to the Winds facility event will end. Appearance rates for featured adventurers and dragons will be boosted, but it doesn't say anything about these being limited, so I think we can presume everything here, like I said, will be part of the normal summoning pool. Yaten definitely has kind of a bad boy personality based on what he said in the trailer. Time to unveil the best damn festival you've ever seen. A master at festival planning who left his homeland to hone his craft. Despite his love of napping and unkempt appearance, his passion for festivals has brought joy to many a sad and lonely town. I'm hoping to see some interaction between him and Su Fang just because of the whole Pyro Blossoms aspect of Su Fang. Maybe they could throw a festival together, that'd be kind of sweet. As far as the stats go on Yaten, pretty high strength, decent HP. He is an attacker, so his stats skew more towards strength. I'm not sure quite where that ranks now that we've got so many 5 stars around, but that looks to me like pretty much the upper limit for current Sword adventurers, so that is a very high strength stat. Sword is also a really good class, so just based on their basic attacks and Force Strike, it's hard to go too wrong with the sword, and thankfully the skills on Yaten also look really good. So Festival Rush deals shadow damage to enemies directly ahead and increases the user's energy level by 1 stage. Then we kind of have this really long Yu-Gi-Oh-like text that you see in Fae sometimes. They've kind of cleaned that up now with some templating that I really appreciate. Unfortunately in Dragalia, the energy mechanic is one of the things that still is very wordy. It's basically explaining that when the energy level reaches 5, which is 5 of those musical notes, the character is considered energized, and at that point, their next attack or recovery skill is upgraded. And it's not stated in the game, but basically it's a 50% upgrade to that attack or that recovery skill, and that resets your energy levels back to 0. So this Festival Rush skill also has a special property that when Yaten is energized, a variant called Festival Dance will be used instead, dealing additional damage. Pretty straightforward, to be honest. It only buffs his own energy, so this isn't going to power up your team, but if Yaten has a low cooldown on this, or this has a low SP cost, swords can generate SP pretty quickly, so just using this as an engine for his own energy, he can probably achieve that Festival Dance very quickly, and the fact that that does additional damage, and it's also always going to be the one getting energized, means it's probably going to hit for a lot. Then Bold Blade is the team support move, increases the entire team's energy levels by 2 stages, but that's basically all it does. And energy hasn't really appeared in Shadow from what I can tell so far, so kind of cool to see it branch into this element. We've definitely gotten Flame, Wind, Light, and Water adventurers with it, but correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we've gotten any Shadow characters with it so far. So Bold Blade is a little unfortunate that it doesn't deal damage or have some secondary effect, but it's possible that it's on a low cooldown, as sword skills often are. If that's the case, this could energize your team pretty quickly. The other drawback to energy, though, is if a unit gets afflicted, their energy levels will reset back to 0, so you do have to run a somewhat cohesive team comp, or you want to be in an environment like Mercurial Gauntlet where you're not going to be facing afflictions at all. For co-abilities, Yaten has Dragon Haste of 15%, standard sword co-ability, not the greatest co-ability, it's honestly pretty negligible most of the time. It's one of the ones that isn't usually worth going up to 50 nodes and upgrading characters for. The main reason you'd want to upgrade a character like a sword unit to 50 nodes is actually just for the small stat boost. But nevertheless, it can come in handy in a pinch when you're trying to do a speed clear, or you happen to break early because you're using a sword, and that Dragon Haste kind of counteracts that and lets you actually transform into a dragon despite breaking early. That's the kind of niche or corner case where Dragon Haste will actually come in handy. As far as abilities, Yaten has energy equals strength and critical rate of 3, increases the user's strength and critical rate as their energy level increases. The maximum bonus given when the user is energized is strength plus 20% and critical rate plus 8%. That is really awesome. It actually kind of raises some questions for me. Obviously, one is, what are the intermediate levels? The second would be, is this a character who could just intentionally stay energized and not use skills and just stay energized just to maintain that really high buff? Because 20% strength and 8% critical rate is a lot to have just as a passive amount. It seems like a very powerful ability. It's the kind of thing that could actually push energy over the top, because honestly, energy has been a little bit lacking as a mechanic. There are some really good standouts like Valentine's Hildegard, whose energy is a very welcome bonus and kind of makes her stand out as a healer. But a lot of characters like, say, Dragalia Nefaria or Pia that have energy, they don't really use it in a way that is very compelling at all. So this is actually very compelling, and obviously every time you cast your first skill, you're going to be increasing the amount of buff you get from this, which is very good. Paralysis Res is next of 100%. You never know what this means. It could just be that we have New Year's Tidings, Fortune from Afar coming back. Maybe it hints that High Jupiter's coming up, since we're almost due for another High Dragon, and I wouldn't be too surprised if that comes out around Chapter 9, which we know is happening on July 15th. Finally, we have Energized Strength plus 20%, so every time you achieve that 5th musical note, or that 5th stack of energy, that's when you're considered energized, so that's when you would get this 20% strength boost for 15 seconds. In addition to this passive boost from the first ability, that should stay there until you actually expend your energized state. So energized strength plus 20% is very good as well. It's on Lucretia and it's on Annalie right now, and there's even a worm print called The Petal Queen that features artwork of Not. This was given out for free during the Valentine's story event, and it gives you essentially Energy Prep 5, which lets you start off a quest energized. In speed environments like Mercurial Gauntlet, that is a very powerful effect because either of those characters, or now Yaten, will start the match with this 15-second buff, which is a fourth of the match in that case, and if you cast the skill, you can start building up your energy again, get a second buff within that duration, so that's kind of a powerful print to synergize with a character like this. I could see Yaten being pretty good for Mercurial Gauntlet as well, but he would need to be able to energize the team at least once to really shine, I feel, so I'm not sure he'd be able to cast his skills that many times, but maybe in conjunction with our second character, he would be able to get the job done. That brings us to Natalie, who says, "Time to throw the festival to end all festivals." And she is a traveling festival planner who aids Yaten as a capable and hardworking apprentice. Her rough manner of speech betrays a kind big sister persona. I can already see her being a favorite of people just based on her character artwork and personality. She, on the other hand, has a very high strength stat. Not that Yaten's was bad, but this is obvious to me that this is actually tied for highest strength in the game with Ieyasu. I would definitely recognize that 521 anywhere, and obviously now with augments coming up soon, we're going to be able to add plus 50 to both of these, so she's likely to be a very capable damage dealer. Her first skill, Defiant Dance, pretty straightforward. Just deal shadow damage to enemies directly ahead and increases her energy level by 1 stage. And actually, I missed this part in the trailer. Damage will be increased as the user's HP decreases. Then from there, the rest of the text is just about energy. So that's the Defiant part of the dance, is that the weaker she is, the stronger the blow from this, which honestly sounds pretty awesome. We got a mechanic like that on Veronica from the Fae crossover, and the thing is, her skill wasn't even weak when she was at higher amounts of HP. It just became that much stronger when she was at low HP. So the great thing about a mechanic like that is, if the values are set appropriately, you won't have to jump through that many hoops to actually take advantage of this skill, and just by itself, dealing damage and energizing, or rather giving her 1 energy stack toward energizing, probably going to be good, but we'd have to see the cooldown on this. This does have multiple effects going on here, so if they make this pretty costly to charge, that could be a pretty big detriment to Natalie, but honestly, I see this as being pretty good. Then she has Clean Slate, removes all debuffs from the user, so important to note here, it doesn't say afflictions, so I'm guessing this won't cleanse your afflictions, but just debuffs like strength down, defense down, that type of thing. It would be able to cleanse bleed, but I'm honestly not sure if adventurers can actually get bleed or only enemies can. If the user's HP is below 30% of max HP when using this skill, increases the user's strength by 15% for 10 seconds. So that part synergizes with Defiant Dance. When you're at low HP, you can get even more strength. And if the user's HP is above or equal to 30% of max, reduces their HP to 20% of max HP. So essentially, this lets you get into range for Defiant Dance on its own. So I take back what I said about having to play around with HP thresholds. This already lets you do that built in, and grants her a 1-use Divergent Shield that nullifies damage less than 80% of her maximum HP. Divergent shields can stack with ordinary shields. So awesome that she actually gets a shield that can stack. That's the first time this has happened. Obviously, one of the dragons that comes to mind here is Nyarlathotep. Nyarlathotep is a 50% shadow strength dragon, but only when your HP is above 30%. And when your HP falls to 30% or below, he has an ability, or they have an ability rather, called Last Bulwark. And Last Bulwark essentially gives you a 1-use 60% HP shield, but if you ever dip into that low HP range again, the shield is 1 use in the sense that 1 attack will destroy it, but every time you fall back into that low HP range, you get your shield again if you don't have a shield. So I kind of see some connection here between her and Nyarlathotep, but it might actually be pretty anti-synergistic, because in order to be at a low HP and take advantage of the increased damage from Defiant Dance, she's likely going to be outside of the Nyarlathotep strength boost range. So right now I'm kind of seeing it as a nombo, but maybe it's a combo. maybe the increase in damage is sufficient enough that even without your Nyarlathotep strength aura, it still helps you. And it's possible that the mechanics of a fight like High Jupiter might involve multiple back-to-back unavoidable damage segments. If there are segments like that, the value of those shields goes up a lot, since you can basically just eat unavoidable attacks. 80 or 60% of HP is a very huge shield, so I'm kind of excited to actually try out Natalie if I happen to summon her. Right now it's not looking like I'm going to be summoning on the showcase since it's not limited, but maybe one day if I happen to pick up Natalie, I would be very curious to try her out. I'm glad that they made her distinct from Ieyasu, since that's going to be the obvious comparison for her. Whereas someone like Yaten only has Rodrigo and Berserker to compare to, and although Rodrigo is good, I think people gravitate toward the complex mechanics of 5 stars more, and Berserker has blindness res, so he's kind of different. But as for Natalie, she is very similar to Ieyasu because of her paralysis res, her strength co-ability, her being a blade, same amount of strength. So at least she has this interesting low HP shield thing going on. I'm not sure it'll actually be good, and it's going to be very hard to be better than Bleed, but just something as simple as having a quick to cast first skill with a short iframe duration compared to, Ieyasu, who just stands there forever to do his Sakura Flurry. That kind of thing could make a difference depending on the mechanics of a given fight, and especially High Jupiter, since that's the one I'm thinking that these characters are going to be most suited for. Her abilities are Extra Energy of 3, grants an 80% chance that a user's energy level will increase by an additional stage upon being increased. So sometimes you're going to get more energy off of her first skill, which should get you to an energized state faster. 80% is the same proc rate as Bleed. It's a pretty good percent chance that you'll actually get 2 energy off of that skill, and it's not as detrimental. I think that it's somewhat random because, you only need 5 energy stacks, so you can afford 1 to miss. Like, say you get 2 energy the first times you use her first skill, and then you miss on the final one, well, you're still going to be at 5 energy, and you can energize your next skill used. And once you are energized, I don't think you can hold extra energies. Like, you can't hold 6. You can only hold 5 until you cast your skill, and then you can build up more. So that's kind of a good ability. Finally, she has HP below 30% equals strength and attack rate of 3, increases strength by 20% and attack rate by 10%, which HP is 30% or below. So here again, my mind immediately goes to Nyarlathotep, but I still don't know if it's actually worth it, because he's going to lose his strength aura when her HP is that low. So on one hand, you're kind of hedging with her damage, and even when you're in a weakened state, you're still getting a high amount of strength and an attack rate buff. However, losing that 50% strength aura is just too big. I think she'll be much better off with just Marishi 10 or the new dragon we're going to take a look at, who, depending on what her cooldown is on her first skill, might also be the preferred dragon for her. Let's go ahead and move on to that now, though, and it's, of course, Shinobi. I will show you what a ninja can do. So, pretty big difference between Shinobi and Ninja Bride Aoi, but Shinobi says, he is, a dragon who is at home among darkness and shadow. He fells his foes utilizing an arsenal of unique skills. The first ninjas of Hinamoto are said to have learned their techniques from him. And he has a pretty nice stat spread, pretty similar to most attacking dragons. There's not a lot of variation in dragon stats, to be honest. His skill is Shuriken Shower, deals shadow damage to the target and nearby enemies, and energizes the entire team. Once energized, using any applicable skill will reset that energy's level to 0, that adventurer's energy level to 0. He has Shadow Strength of 20% and Shadow Skill Damage of 70%, which is identical, but for Flame, to Kono Hanasakia. She's the same, but for Flame. So, when she was first previewed, it was very hard to tell how good she would be, and I think she surpassed my expectations. Honestly, a lot of Flame characters have multiple attacking skills. They have weapons with attacking skills, or their first skill charges very quickly and they can cast it multiple times. Some of them, like Cerise, just have such an insane damage off their first skill that Konohana Sakuya ends up being best for them despite everything else. And from what I've seen, the early analysis of Shinobi so far, it does seem that bleed units like Ieyasu and Botan are going to be more powerful with Shinobi by about 10%. So the thinking there is they may not have multiple attacking skills. Those two do have attacking skills as their S3 or their third skill, their weapon skill. But even their first skill, because it inflicts bleed, and bleed, the tick damage from bleed actually does scale up with skill damage, Shinobi ends up being really good for them, and pretty much any shadow unit, I would think, with 2 to 3 attacking skills. So a lot of the lower rarity units like Taro, I think of Althemia. She might be an interesting case though because she happens to have a full HP equals skill damage passive, so it's possible that she's on the bubble for using Shinobi or not. But definitely someone like Veronica who has 2 attacking skills. There are a lot of good candidates to use here, and possibly the Axe units too, like Kurin and Sazanka, but from what I've seen so far, I'm not sure whether they're actually better off with Shinobi or not. This is one of those things that I'm going to be, avidly reading Reddit threads to see the math, see what people have to say, try to consult a variety of sources because I haven't done the math on this myself. I don't know for sure. But my hunch here is, even for characters like, let's say Alex, for example, Alex can have 3 attacking skills, and she happens to have full HP equals skill damage in her kit. So one of the concerns with dragons like Shinobi and Konohana Sakuya is diminishing returns. The more skill damage you get at the expense of other stats, the worse your performance will be for each additional point of skill damage. For characters who already have like 40% skill damage in their kit, having a lot of skill damage is not necessarily as good as having a mix of strength and skill damage because these things get multiplied together when damage is calculated. So you kind of want to have some in each category, and then they get multiplied, and that number will end up being bigger than just stacking everything, adding everything in one category, and multiplying it by 1 in the other categories. So that's kind of the theory behind how to maximize damage. But the thing is, skill damage doesn't diminish at a fast enough rate that you're really over-capping here or you're going too high for most characters. Even when you have 70% skill damage off your dragon, a lot of characters will still want 30% on a worm print. They're not going to be unhappy with 100% skill damage. It takes a while before it actually kind of drops off. So the thing is, though, with her being a strength dragon, him being a strength dragon for Shinobi and her for Konohana Sakuya, and only providing 20%, the benefit from extra strength is a lot higher. So prints like Flash of Genius or Bonds Between Worlds that provide strength, you're getting a lot less diminishing returns than if you have a 60% strength dragon. So the drop-off from skill damage prints is fairly low, but the benefit from strength prints is really high. So you still probably want to run like Resounding Rendition and Bonds Between Worlds on units running Shinobi. But basically, compared to a 60% strength dragon, your mileage out of that strength print is a lot better, and at very little cost to your skill damage print. That's kind of what I'm trying to say here is, it's going to be better or comparable for a lot of characters. It's not that easy to overcap skill damage with how much you want to get. It's really good, so I see this as being a very powerful dragon, probably better than Marichi 10 for a lot of adventurers, but there are still going to be units who don't primarily rely on skills. It's tough to think of one in a vacuum and kind of off the top of my head. I do think Shadow is a class or element that has a lot of skill damage based attackers. Even random units like Orion, Kleiman, they're going to be wanting to do skill damage or have skill damage because they have multiple attacking skills. Norwyn, for example. So while I'm not sure, I haven't checked for every one of those characters how good Shinobi is, my initial take is that Shinobi is extremely good. And I think we kind of slept on Konohana Sakuya. Part of that is Flame, but definitely looking at Shadow as an element, there are a lot of good candidates for Shinobi. So that's going to do it for this preview, though, everyone. It was pretty cool to look through all of these new adventures, the 2 of them and the new dragon. I would, of course, love to get some new 4 stars, but if the 4 stars are returning here, it does make my decision making easier. This will likely be a skip for me. I hope that you have luck if you decide to summon on Festival Phenoms. I will probably skip, as I said before. Let me know what you think of the new characters and the new dragon in the comments below. I'd be curious to hear what you have to say. Do you have any other thoughts or analysis that you want to share with others? I know that people appreciate it, and I know that people read it, myself included. Anyway, though, that's going to do it once again, so thank you again for watching, take care, and I'll see you next time.